Hey there friends, in this video I'm going to talk about a problem which a lot of people who suffer from DPDR and anxiety go through, and that is your recovery seems to plateau. So things have sort of improved, maybe your symptoms are lessened, maybe you're not even scared of your symptoms anymore, but they're still there. And I know this can be such a frustrating and annoying thing and a little bit confusing as well. So in this video, I'm going to talk about exactly why that's happening and what you can do about it to fix it to finally make proper progress. So look, this happened to me as well when I was going through my DPDR recovery. What happened is that for quite a while, I was sort of getting a little bit better. And in the end, it got to a point where I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'm just sort of getting on with life and life is okay and the symptoms are sort of there and they'll just go by themselves. Sort of all the info that I'd read about, just get on with your life and the symptoms will just go. And I was sort of saying to myself, well, I am freaking getting on with my life. I am just doing stuff. The symptoms don't bother me anymore, but I'm still not getting to that final point of just everything finally lifting and me breaking out. What I sort of didn't realize is that throughout the course of a few years, I'd sort of set up my life to be almost very sort of workaholic. Everything is a task that needed to be fixed. Everything was some kind of goal that needed to be achieved. The problem of why the DPDR and sort of that bubbling anxiety level stayed wasn't anything to do with the symptoms of it all. It was to do with my life, my outlook on life. Because everything was something that needed to be achieved, it turns out that that was the thing, which was keeping my DPDR going, because everything was always so urgent and I always had to do this, and the anxiety was still bubbling along underneath. So anyway, the point of all this is that this is what's happening to you if you've plateaued. And I'm not just saying that because it happened to me. All the people I help recover from this, some of them do reach this level of being plateaued where they'll say to me, I'm not scared of the symptoms anymore. I am just getting on with my life. But when we sort of look a little bit deeper, we do realize there are still things that they're anxious about and then they're worried about. And you sort of get into that habit of constantly being on alert and constantly checking and constantly, scanning for threats, even though there's none there. But if the threat is something that you haven't identified or you don't know what it is, but your sort of subconscious still recognizes it, then it could be possible that you are just going to stay stuck in this plateaued stage. So what do you actually do about this? Well, the first thing you've got to do is acknowledge that maybe there are still things you're anxious about. And even if you say to me, Dan, I love life, everything's great, I'm not anxious about anything. The fact that you still have DPDR and anxiety symptoms is proof that something is still bothering you and you just haven't identified that. What you can do to identify it is really to look at the habits you've got. And the reason I say this is because anxiety and DPDR is just a collection of bad habits. That's all it is. Whether that's mental stuff or physical stuff, it's all just a habit. And because it's a habit, it just feels normal to you, and that's why it can be so hard to recognize. So some examples could be, for me, it was the checklist thing. My entire life is a checklist, and my self-worth and everything is built upon whether I get stuff done. So I always had to get stuff done. So I'm always putting pressure on myself. So everything's always a threat. So therefore the DPDR is always there. So what could it be for you? What thing are you missing right now? What are you not being honest with yourself with? For example, are you always getting angry, or are you always trying to control the situation? Do you always have to have certainty before you go ahead with something? Are you always sort of thinking the worst about what can happen in the future? And if that is the case, then that could very well be the thing which is keeping you in this. Say, for example, you're always trying to control everything. What essentially you're saying to yourself there is that control equals good, not having control equals bad. And you might not realize this, but there's very, very little things that you can control. So if you do have this thing of I always have to have control, is it any wonder that you've still got DPDR? you're trying to live out a life which is sort of impossible. So then you can look at that and go, well, what do I actually have control over? What do I have influence over? Maybe I need to recognize more when I'm trying to control something I don't have any control over. Or maybe I have to accept the fact that I can't uh, control what people say to me, or I can't control a situation. Like it can go so many ways, and that's just one example of control. Maybe it's still linked a little bit to the DPDR itself. Maybe it's this thing that you've sort of said to yourself, okay, well, if I just get on with life, then everything's going to be okay. And it isn't 100% okay yet. So there's this little niggling thought in the back of your mind that is slowly growing, saying, well, is this actually going to go? Why hasn't it gone yet? I thought if I did this, this, and this, it would go. Why am I still like this? And then that's just a little bit of underlying tension, but it's like chucking a couple of hot fires, hot coals onto the fire. It just needs that little bit to keep it ticking over. Bottom line, you got to have a bit of a reality check with yourself and sort of say to yourself, I'm still sensitized right now. That just sucks. I don't want to be, but I am. And the reason I know that is because I have still symptoms. Even though everything's great, even though everything is 99% improved and I'm almost there, my body is still thinking and my mind is still thinking that there are still threats. I'm still on alert stage. I'm still on hyper alert stage, even if you don't feel like it. So be honest with yourself and say this. And then once you can sort of say that to yourself, then that sort of allows you to open the door to go, well, what actually is it? What actually is going on with me? What am I really scared of right now? And when you can do that, then you can sort of discover what it is, and then sort of put things in place to diminish all that type of stuff. And for me, putting stuff in place looked like nothing. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay to be angry or upset or whatever negative emotion. That's all normal, and I'm still safe in that moment. It's okay to do this thing and not have it perfect. I'm still safe in that moment. So it's sort of like that disconnecting for me, the feeling of safety from outcome, just to the feeling of safety where the outcome doesn't actually matter. I can still be safe. And for me, eventually in the end, that was the thing that got me out of it. My friends, if you do need help with this and you want to get out of this goddamn plateau stage that you're in, then reach out, check out the Freedom course. It's a step-by-step guide about exactly what to do and how to do it. There's already a lot of people in it, and there's already a lot of people recovering right now, getting back to normal, actual, true normal, where they don't even think about DPDR or have any symptoms anymore. The time's right for you to do it, and you should check it out. The link is in a pinned comment and also the description. I'll be with you every step of the way, and you deserve this. You really do deserve this. So my friends, check that out. I'd love to see you in there, and until next time, I'll see you in the next vid. Bye.